Hi, I'm Lisa Smith, Executive Director of the Natural Areas Association, and I'd like to welcome you all today to our State Natural Areas Program Roundtable. This particular roundtable is our annual State Reports Roundtable. This roundtable has been happening for a lot of years for NAA. It's one of the foundational programs of the organization. We were an organization founded to support state agency practitioners, those who work in this realm of managing ecologically significant landscapes. And and we're just really proud of this initiative because, you know, here we are almost 50 years later, and we're still creating programming that's specific to the work that agency practitioners are involved in. So typically this particular roundtable, the State Reports Roundtable, would be happening at the annual Natural Areas Conference. And as many of you know, that conference was virtual again this year. We're planning to be face-to-face next year for this state report, but I'll tell you about that in another minute. But we, you know, given the situation of the world right now, we're just really thankful that we get to bring this very important programming to you virtually. This is the fourth in 4 roundtables that we've been able to host virtually this year, and we are making plans for 2022. So the silver lining for us has been that we've been able to convene you all more frequently than we would normally. So with that, I'd like to just say a few things about the Natural Areas Association. I know we have some folks that are fairly new to our organization in the meeting today. And I'd like to just take a moment to tell you a little bit about us and some upcoming programming that we have. We're an organization that is dedicated to the management and restoration of ecologically significant landscapes in North America. We believe that protecting nature requires reliable science to inform practice and on the ground work that you all do to protect nature. We also believe that protecting nature requires a network of stewards who work to protect, manage, and restore these important lands and waters. We're an engaged community of peers and colleagues who become a resource to each other by responding to questions and proposing ideas, sharing methodologies, and advancing best practices. And NAA works to convene you all, bring you together so that you can do just that. And we do it in a variety of ways. We distribute quality science virtually, in person, and digitally through diverse programming. So in addition to the SNAP Roundtable that you're going to participate in today, and I've told you a little bit about, we host on-the-ground trainings that we refer to as our Stewardship and Action Field Workshops. These are often hosted by our State Natural Areas Program members. These workshops allow us to tackle regional issues for managers in small group settings. We also publish the Natural Areas Journal. It's a peer-reviewed quarterly publication of the organization. And for those of you who do receive the journal, I hope you're enjoying the October issue, which just recently hit your mailbox. We partner we partner with our member organizations to bring you the annual Natural Areas Conference. And in 2022, our partners in Minnesota and the surrounding region are going to work with us to bring this conference to Duluth. And they've actually been working with us for a couple of years already, organizing this conference. So you've probably been hearing a little bit about it. It's in Duluth. The dates for the conference immediately follow the Labor Day weekend, September 6th through the 8th of 2022. So we hope you'll mark your calendars now and plan to join us for our first in-person Natural Areas Conference since 2019. Call for proposals is open. It will close on March 1st. So please consider submitting a proposal and bring that good science to a broad audience. So again, we hope to see you in Duluth next year. So I've talked about a few program elements. We also host monthly webinars, and the next one will be December 14th. And the focus for that will be rare plant propagation and reintroduction. Check the website out for more information on this. That's where all the information is. And then in February, we have a fun one. This is a webinar focused on detection dogs. Maybe some of you have been hearing about these critters who are an important tool in a practitioner's toolbox. These dogs have been trained to help practitioners monitor and survey for rare and endangered species. So that's again in February. And we have some fun programming coming in January as well. Stay tuned for that. Promotions are being built for that right now. So with that, I'd like to introduce the chair of our State Natural Areas Program Committee, Mike Leahy. Mike is a natural community ecologist who serves as the coordinator of Missouri's Natural Areas Program, and that's housed within the Missouri Department of Conservation. Mike?
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks to all who are participating, especially those who have contributed state reports today. We have a dozen nice state reports today, spanning from west to east and places in between, different state programs across the country. And these reports are going to quickly summarize the size and scope of the different states' programs and highlight different areas of challenges and achievements for this past year. We're going to present the states in alphabetical order, and the recordings are between 5 and 7 minutes in length. And during that time period, you can post questions that you might have in chat, and I'll be monitoring the chat questions so that at the end of each state report, we can helpfully answer some of or most of these questions. And at the end of the state report, we'll have the presenter unmute their computer so that they can answer some of these questions that I'll post and ask. And at the end, we'll have about 10 minutes, give or take, to unmute and just discuss different topics and questions they might want to focus in on for the next State Natural Areas Roundtable, hopefully in person in Duluth next year, and also for our quarterly remote State Natural Area Program meetings that we've been having now for the past year. So with that, enough of me. We'll go ahead and turn it over to the state reports that we've got here, and I'll go ahead and.
Hi, I'm Bill Holimon. I am the director of Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission, which is an agency of the Division of Arkansas Heritage, which is a division of the Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism. This is our organizational chart. These items over here are not, these staff members are our Natural Areas Program staff members. We also have a Heritage Program, which are these staff members. We also have an education component, but we are a small state agency, so really we all wear a lot of hats and we all have multiple duties that cross both a natural areas and heritage program. This is a slide from our recent commission meeting early in November, and summarizing a recent acquisition where we added 85 acres to Warren Prairie Natural Area, which is now up to 6,300 acres between us and the Nature Conservancy. That brings us now to a total of 72,202 acres across 77 natural areas. Of that, 60% is fee title and 40% is conservation easements. So I'm just kind of going to go around the state. I'll start off with Warren Prairie in southern Arkansas, and the coastal plain, which was and still is dominated by industrial timberlands. And down at Warren Prairie, we are working to restore open pine oak flatwoods. And as we're doing that, we are also doing a repatriation project of the endangered red cockaded woodpecker. We're now up to 12 active groups with about 30 birds. Within that, we have patch communities, the most significant being saline soil barrens, which in the wintertime, we have a significant population of wintering Henslow sparrows. And within that patch, we have saline barrens. And on the edge of that, we have the cryptogamic crust, which supports the federally threatened plant geocarpon minimum. And it's the largest population of that threatened plant throughout its range. In central Arkansas, we've been focused on the Maumelle Pinnacles. This property is just on the edge, some of it just slightly within the city limits of Little Rock. And so this photo in the foreground is Rattlesnake Ridge, and these ridges go from east to west as we're looking here. And the significant thing here, these ridges support a really rare natural community type called Ouachita Sandstone Outcrop Barrens, a rare grassland habitat type. And in the foreground, you can see this is Rattlesnake Ridge, and the natural areas from the top and to the left and to the right is land owned by Central Arkansas Water and protects the lake in the background that you see, which is Lake Maumelle, which is Central Arkansas's primary water resource, drinking water. In the background over here, you can also see another ridge, that's Blue Mountain. We completed that acquisition in May. And both of these properties we own and manage in cooperation with the Nature Conservancy. This is looking east from Blue Mountain, and you can see Rattlesnake Ridge here. And also you can see Pinnacle Mountain State Park. And those are collectively, those are all the pinnacles of the mountains of the Maumelle Pinnacles. And these were first described, and perhaps only described, by the famous naturalist Thomas Nuttall when he came through Arkansas in 1819. So it's fantastic that we can keep all of those protected and in good shape. In Western Arkansas, we're working on the Cherokee Prairie Complex. We have 2 natural areas there. Tallgrass Prairie in really good shape. Here you can see in blue, you can see the areas. This is Cherokee Prairie. These blue areas are Flanagan. In between is the Oglesby Preserve. It's owned by the Nature Conservancy. Collectively about 1,300 acres, and you can see there's a lot of opportunity to connect as, and there's a lot of high quality remnants within those areas. In Northern Arkansas, within the Ozarks, we're working primarily on karst and glade sites, also woodland habitat. Devil's Eyebrow Natural Area, we're working on a 40-acre addition to that, which should happen in December. Long list of rare plant species, but also rare animal species like the eastern collar lizard and a significant population of cerulean warblers. Devil's Knobs has a great glade system and some karst habitat and great place to see fall colors. Bushy Cave in the eastern Ozarks of Arkansas has one of the longest cave systems in Arkansas, currently mapped at over 7,000 feet in length and still passageways to be mapped. Within that is the Bushy Cave snail, which is endemic to that cave system. The cave system periodically supports 3 federally listed caves. Slippery Hollow Natural Area in North Arkansas supports 4 federally listed bat species, one of which is the easternmost population of Ozark big-eared bats. And I think there's like 2,000 to 3,000 individuals of that bat total. All of those sites have glade habitat within it, and we are working with some state wildlife grants to restore that habitat along with associated woodland. In eastern Arkansas, we've been working for years to protect pondberry. We had 3 sites in our heritage program. Our research staff recently found a previously unknown population in eastern Arkansas, although unfortunately it does not look like it has good potential for protection. We continue to acquire land or attempt to acquire land. We're working on what would be a new natural area in western Arkansas. This is fairly high elevation for Arkansas, and this would be a pretty good sized area, about 1,200 acres. It has several rare plant species, one of which significantly is the maple leaf oak. This is a tree species that is endemic to western Arkansas and the Ouachita Mountains and Arkansas Valley ecoregions. We've been doing prescribed burns. Our staff have been doing a number of burns, especially in the Grand Prairie ecoregion of eastern Arkansas. But most of our burns are done by contractors, and this is where we have one of our challenges. And during the pandemic, we had some trouble with contractors in general and them not being able to be staffed properly. But now one of our largest contractors, which has done up to $100,000 per year of prescribed burns, has decided no longer to do prescribed burning and just focus on wildfires out west. So that's a big hole, a big gap to fill. And at the same time, we're adding new natural areas to be burned. So that's quite a challenge to meet. This is our budget for this year and last fiscal year. You can see it's pretty similar. We have about a $600,000 increase. I will say that's primarily appropriation increase, so we don't actually have the funds. It's an anticipation of a grant. One challenge in this area, and it's a good challenge, is that we are seeing the potential for increases in Land and Water Conservation Fund grants, but unfortunately on those, it's a reimbursement program, so you have to spend all the money up front and then you get reimbursed half. So for example, if this year we get allocated $1.5 million, which is a possibility, we've got to spend $3 million up front to be able to use that money, and then we get reimbursed. So we're trying to figure out ways to do that, and certainly would be open to hearing how others are addressing that challenge. Thank you.
Well, that was an excellent presentation from Bill in Arkansas, and I don't see any other questions in chat. Does anybody have any questions for Bill and the Arkansas program? I did post that prescribed burn contractors would be an excellent item for future discussions. We've worked with those here in Missouri, and I think other states probably have too as well. And And that can really be a boost for getting more burns done on the ground. I did have a question for Bill in terms of the elevation of that new preserve in the western part of your state on the Washita. What exactly is that elevation there?
So I think it's around 1,700 feet, maybe 2,000. Theo's online. Theo, could you tell us the approximate elevation of that?
Yeah, those peaks out there range between 2,000 and 2,500 feet. And the one we're going to acquire is about 2,000.
Great, thanks. Yeah, our high elevation country here is 1,600 feet. So it's a little bit higher than us.
It's a really neat area. We've got our fingers crossed, but we're pretty confident we'll get this one. And it's got Theo's already found a number of rare species, including that maple leaf oak, which is globally rare. And it also has some of the cross timbers ecoregion that just makes it into western Arkansas. So it'd be nice to be able to protect some of that in Arkansas.
Looks like we probably have time for answering maybe one more question. And then Molly Roski from Maine, I believe, asked if you could describe your program's monitoring efforts for the rare species you mentioned. I know you guys have a pretty detailed monitoring program for the geocarpin, I believe. Maybe just describe that for that Warren Reserve. So
our heritage program does do quite a bit of monitoring, and we do monitor geocarpin and pondberry almost every year. We do that under Section 6 grant funding. That's funding from the Fish and Wildlife Service. And so these populations of geocarpin are really well monitored. Unfortunately, they are seeing some declines in that population. We think perhaps some of that is due to climate change. These things occur in the barrens and that area along the slicks and in the barrens. And we're getting wetter conditions for more of the year, and those barrens are getting a little more productive, which could be causing increased competition for the geocarpin. But right now, that's speculation.
Okay. Well, I think we'll move on to the far west coast, California next.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Wong, and I'm the Director of Communications for the University of California Natural Reserve System. We are the world's largest university-administered network of natural reserves. We provide a platform for university-level education, research, and public service. Each reserve is administered by one of the campuses in the University of California. Most have a reserve director plus a steward to assist with maintenance. The network is tied together by a system-wide office, which is where I work. We coordinate things like legal guidance, IT services, and communications. Our 41 reserves include examples of every major ecosystem in California. To the upper left here, you can see Landell's Hill Big Creek Reserve, which protects a slice of Big Sur that ranges from the beach to the ridgeline of the Santa Lucia Mountains. To the right of that is Burns Pinyon Ridge Reserve, one of several desert ecosystems in the NRS. Below that is a glimpse of McLaughlin Natural Reserve. This former open pit gold mine has rare plants that grow on serpentinite soils. To the left of that is Angelo Coast Range Reserve. Located in Mendocino County, it hosts a major study following the fate of raindrops through soils, plants, and into streams and bedrock. To the upper left here is a view from Santa Cruz Island Reserve, which is the largest of California's Channel Islands. UC doesn't own this land, so our field station is a partnership with the Nature Conservancy. To the right of that is a photo of two battling male northern elephant seals. This was taken at Año Nuevo Island Reserve, a partnership reserve with California State Parks. It hosts a 50-plus year research project on elephant seal migration, behavior, and physiology. Below that is Blue Oak Ranch Reserve. Located just east of San Jose, its extensive facilities are popular with university classes and for meetings. To the left of that is Valentine Camp. Located in Mammoth Lakes in Eastern California, it has a glacial moraine, aspen forest, and basin range ecosystem types, which are dominated by sagebrush. As a system, the NRS has enjoyed some great successes recently. Our capital campaign coordinated fundraising across 9 UC campuses, raising more than $90 million in real estate and other support. 9 of our reserves, though, were burned by wildfires in 2020. In response, we launched a major effort to document ecosystem recovery with high-resolution drone flights paired with on-the-ground sampling of soils, plants, and animals. We also gained 2 new field stations at Lassen Volcanic National Park and Point Reyes National Seashore. These are partnership reserves with the National Park Service. Challenges to our program include financial viability, which has been a historic problem for our network since it was founded in 1965, raising awareness of the NRS at the University of California and beyond, involving more students from minority backgrounds in the field sciences, and of course, climate change and the drought and wildfires it brings, which threaten both our facilities and the biodiversity at our reserves. Thanks so much for your interest, and I look forward to answering any questions you might have.
Kathleen, this is Mike Leahy. I had a question on any of the stewardship activities. Obviously you use students and university staff and faculty for research, but in terms of, say, invasive species control, or even if you do any prescribed burning or other, or even public access infrastructure, is that done by university
personnel? Yes, absolutely. So, for example, at our McLaughlin Reserve, which I showed a picture of, one of the reserve directors spends a lot of his time in the summertime spot spraying with herbicide to get rid of non-native European annual grasses, to encourage the growth of these rare serpentinite soil forbs that are found in very few places in California. We also have a number of large-scale burning operations that we're starting up with these days. And there are also, those are combined with studies that faculty and other staff conduct at the same time. And that's in conjunction with CAL FIRE, which is California's major fire agency. As for facilities, can you repeat the question, please?
Oh, it just in terms of, hiking trails or other public access points. I wasn't sure if any of these are open to the public. Some might, and some obviously wouldn't be.
Yes, the majority are not open to the public to preserve the ecosystem, but also to protect people's research equipment. And there's just a few, like 3 of our 41 reserves, well, maybe 5, I guess, because of the new associations with the National Park Service, the new reserves that we've got. So that's not our land, and so that's public land. But otherwise, we also have, on all of our reserves, we have trails so that people can access all of the different habitats on the sites. We also have, we typically do have facilities where people can stay overnight, use the kitchen, shower. Many of them have labs, and let's see what else. Some of them have vehicles, reference collections of plants and animals, and some of them have like 50+ year data sets on climate, and also other data that has been collected on like species specimens, that kind of thing, that have been done on the sites.
Great, thanks. There's one other question, but maybe let's see. Glenn Jude asks, has there been any progress in the restoration of native bunch grass versus exotic annual grasses? That's probably a big question.
I don't think so our We haven't been able to really do great restoration of the bunch grasses. The primary activity that we have done is grazing and burning, just to reduce the competition from the exotic annual grasses. There's also been some herbicide use, as I mentioned earlier, but not on as large a scale as probably many of the organizations that are speaking here today might want to utilize. So no, I wouldn't say that we have been terribly successful. I think we're just learning to live with these exotic annuals, and there's just no other way around it that we've figured out.
Great. Well, in the interest of time, I think we'll move on, and we may circle back to some of these questions at the end. The next presentation is going to be from the other mountain ranges in the middle of somewhat in the middle of the country, from Colorado.
Hello, everyone. I'm Raquel Wertsbaugh. I'm the coordinator of the Colorado Natural Areas Program. I really appreciate this opportunity to share with you more about our program and hopefully learn about other state programs. So the Colorado Natural Areas Program began in 1977 through statute with the Colorado Natural Areas Act. We are currently housed within Colorado Parks and Wildlife, which is our state's fish and wildlife agency. We don't actually own or manage any of our state natural areas. It's all through designation, which can occur on any land ownership type, including federal, state, city, county, NGO, and private lands. These are through voluntary conservation agreements between the landowner and ultimately our Department of Natural Resources through articles of designation. We currently have 95 designated state natural areas across Colorado, encompassing approximately 180,000 acres. Our staff consists of one full-time permanent coordinator, which is myself, and one 9-month temporary technician and one dedicated contractor through the Colorado Natural Heritage Program. We're also the only state government program in Colorado with a focus on rare plant conservation. I'll also add that we have an active volunteer steward program of about 60 volunteers that help us to monitor our state natural areas, as well as a 7-member governor-appointed advisory council. Some highlights I wanted to share with you today. The first being our partnership with the Colorado State Land Board. So they own 2.8 million surface acres in Colorado, and state land board lands are generally working lands. There's oil and gas leases, grazing, solar farms, ecosystem services. And all of the money being generated from these lands goes to benefit the school children of Colorado. We currently have 24 state natural area designations on state land board owned lands, and these designations are an important stewardship tool for the land board and also are very important in helping to protect some of our state's most unique landscapes and imperiled flora and fauna. So a specific natural area I wanted to highlight is our Mount Callahan and Logan Wash Mine natural area. This is located in western Colorado. Our program has had a 40-year partnership with an energy company called Oxy that owns this land containing 3 out of 4 populations of the federally threatened parachute penstemon, which is an endemic plant species just to this area of the state. We've worked with this energy company over the years to designate 3 different parcels as state natural areas, helping to protect this very rare species and aid in its recovery. We've also recently partnered with the Colorado Natural Heritage Program to conduct innovative plant monitoring on this species. So in the past, we did our monitoring on foot, which as you can see from this photo, it's very steep. This plant grows on steep, loose shale slopes. We like to call it extreme botany. So we're now working with the Heritage Program to utilize drone technology to survey for new populations and hopefully do quantitative monitoring on our transects. So some wins for our program: we've recently obtained a stable operating budget, which was a huge win for us. Previous to that, we were surviving off of grants and soft money. So we're now able to do some proactive planning for our program. And we've done a lot with program outreach. We've created several new story maps, updated our website, done a lot to improve communications with both internal and external customers. We are striving to be an innovative leader in statewide conservation implementation, namely through our State Wildlife Action Plan, which in its latest revision included plants. We're working a lot with partners to implement out-of-the-box conservation actions for plant species of greatest conservation need. And our volunteer program our volunteer steward program really continues to be extremely invaluable and meaningful to us, including about 60 volunteers that help us to monitor our sites. Some challenges for our program. The first being that we are a small staff with a big mission. As I mentioned, I'm the only permanent full-time staff for the program. Another limitation is our organizational structure. Our program is buried deep within our state wildlife agency, and that, coupled with the fact that Colorado does not have any statutory authority over plants, we have no plant statute, just makes it challenging to continue to try to show our relevancy and our value within the state wildlife agency. Another challenge that affects not just our program, but natural resource managers across the state is there's been a significant increase in recreation across Colorado, especially since the beginning of the pandemic. Recreation has just exploded. It's had some negative effects on some of our natural resources, and our program, among other natural resource programs in Colorado, are really struggling and trying to work together to figure out how to strike that balance between recreation and conservation in our state. So here's my contact information and also the website for the Colorado Natural Areas Program. Feel free to check that out if you'd like to learn more about us, and I really look forward to learning about other state programs. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Raquel. We had a question about the registration program in terms of how much protection it might gain from outside influences, if that's ever been challenged, or if people have, landowners have taken their natural area out of registration to have it developed, or some other, negative influence.
Sure. And I was just reading the response from Virginia, and in Colorado, it's very similar. There's no legal protections. It's a voluntary conservation agreement. But I will say, in the about 45-year history of the program in Colorado, there's only been one instance of a natural area being de-designated, and it was only because of it was what became part of the Denver metro area and under eminent domain, and interstate ended up going through it. And so that was really the only instance of that. Otherwise, we've luckily not had any issues. All 95 of our state natural areas, we've had, great partnerships and long histories with those landowners and managers, and it's all worked really well so far.
Great, that's excellent to hear, and it's also great to hear that your state wildlife action plan includes plants. I know some states do. We have that as well, and I think it's a real win for overall conservation. So I guess, in the interest of time, we'll now move a little farther east to the state of Illinois, my home state. And with that, I'll mute myself.
Greetings, Natural Area Association from Illinois DNR Division of Natural Heritage. The Illinois DNR houses its Division of Natural Heritage within the Office of Resource Conservation, with our sister divisions of Wildlife, Fisheries, Forestry, and Private Lands. Natural heritage responsibilities include inventory, stewardship, and defense of natural areas, non-game species, and their habitats. Natural Heritage oversees the state's endangered and threatened species and natural areas programs. Our work is closely tied to the efforts of two governor-appointed committees. The Illinois Endangered Species Protection Board authorizes species listing and delistings, whereas the Illinois Nature Preserve Commission protects Illinois' highest quality natural areas as nature preserves or land and water reserves. Including commission staff, we are nearly 50 administrative, field, program, and regulatory personnel working to track, manage, and defend Illinois remnant natural communities. In the 1970s, many of NAA's past leaders performed the Illinois Natural Areas Inventory to identify the state's highest quality natural communities, habitats for listed species, unique geological features, and unusual concentrations of flora and fauna. The INAI is now comprised of 1,514 sites, totaling over 477,000 acres, and found within 14 natural divisions and their respective sections. Currently, high-quality natural community types make up around 225,000 acres. Today, the Illinois Natural Areas Program focuses on streamlining the division's natural areas work, involving acquisition, management, monitoring, research, and adaptive methods and tools. These efforts unite the foundational work of NAA pioneers with that of our new young practitioners. Field highlights in a clockwise direction include red cedar removal performed as a giant first managerial effort of the Glacial Drift Hill Prairie Natural Community in the Grand Prairie Natural Division. Cedar removal, understory thinning, exotic species control, and prescribed burns in the Shawnees Hill Natural Division have revitalized a limestone glade natural community site and its rich herbaceous flora and invertebrate fauna. Woody encroachment removal from an expansive grassland revealed Illinois' largest known population of the state endangered spring lady's tresses orchid at a state recreation area, soon to be nominated for INA, in the Southern Till Plain Natural Division. A state record small metallic antfly was discovered in a patch of wild sweet potato vine in the Middle Mississippi River Border Natural Division. Site plant and insect diversity are increasing, likely because proximity to Mississippi River bluffs have spared it from incidental pesticide applications that affect many natural areas. A spring 2020 burn, followed by the management of woody encroachment shading the Glacial Drift Hill Prairie Natural Community in the Upper Mississippi River and Illinois River Bottomlands Natural Division, resulted in an impressive one growing season response. Natural areas win when we engage partners. One big win for Illinois natural communities was the recent enactment of Illinois' Natural Areas Stewardship Act, whereby not-for-profit conservation land trust partners receive state support to steward protected INAIs. In addition, state wildlife grant dollars support projects fostering INAI stewardship, and the division's match focuses on updating management plans to identify objectives necessary to sustain these features, support inevitable staff succession, and guide volunteer support. In coming years, we plan to continue to target this federal support to steward community assemblages such as barrens, glades, and woodlands. Our future work is faced with multiple challenges. The scale of invasive plant control needed in our natural areas and the threat these species present to Illinois biodiversity cannot be overstated. Even with available financial support, the pool of contractors with the necessary technical expertise and understanding of natural community sensitivity is limited. Our greatest challenge is developing a more supportive, applied stewardship model that expands our toolbox. For example, a workforce training initiative could serve as a pipeline to an expanded collective of vendors. Furthermore, expanded regional habitat teams could serve under field staff direction, enabling increased focus on prescribed fire and controlling prolific invasive species. The INAI provides trustworthy documentation of Illinois' natural communities deserving attention. Where appropriate, perpetual protection mechanisms should be immediately sought. Foremost legal protection to these rare places is bestowed by the Illinois Nature Preserves Commission with landowner discretion. Although many INAIs have received this protection, some have not. A site near Rockford, Illinois known as Camp Grant during World War II, where George B. Fell's father discovered a rare dry gravel prairie in the 1950s, has recently been threatened by airport expansion. Legal action by the Natural Land Institute, conservation partners, and citizens attracted lawmaker attention and stalled construction days before prairie removal. Here, 70 years later, Fell's pioneering land trust upheld his vision and defended an unprotected natural community where the state had little authority. We don't know the conclusion of this story, but the lesson is clear. We must seek legal protection for rare natural communities before they are threatened. Natural communities have extraordinary and transcendent value. As their stewards, we are tasked with the responsibility of advocating for their protection, responsible management, and persistence. Thank you.
Well, that was great. Great narration. I can't beat that narrator voice. Are there any questions for Illinois? Hopefully the Bell Bowl Prairie will eventually be conserved or preserved. That's still up in the air as far as I've been advised. I think we do definitely have a topic for a future roundtable in terms of looking at contractor workforces for working on natural areas. I know we work with and struggle with that here in Missouri as well, in terms of a contractor base. Okay, well, we'll move further east to Indiana next.
Hello, my name is Ronald Hellmich. I am the Director of the Division of Nature Preserves with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. Indiana's Natural Areas Program is the Division of Nature Preserves housed within the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. Within the department are also the landholding divisions of state parks and reservoirs, forestry, and fish and wildlife. There are also several regulatory divisions: water, historic preservation, and reclamation and oil and gas. There are also the supporting administrative divisions like finance, purchasing and accounting, assets, payroll, etc. Indiana's Natural Areas Program started with the passage of the Nature Preserves Act in 1967. It now contains three main programs: Nature Preserves, the Indiana Natural Heritage Data Center, and the Lake Michigan Coastal Program. Staffing includes 22 full-time staff and up to 29 part-time or limited-term positions. There are 294 state-dedicated nature preserves protecting 54,569 acres. These are owned and managed by many different agencies and organizations, not just our division. There are 47 partners throughout the state with dedicated nature preserves. The mean size of a preserve is 185 acres with a median size of just under 84 acres. Our newest nature preserves dedicated this year are Ginn Woods Nature Preserve, owned and managed by Ball State University, 161 acres. Grand Prairie Nature Preserve, owned and managed by the Division of Nature Preserves, 10.3 acres. And Seabird Woods Nature Preserve, owned and managed by the LaPorte County Parks Foundation at 39.15 acres. Some recent work to mention: we conducted moth surveys at 2 East Central Indiana forest preserves. 417 moth species were documented, with at least 65 considered remnant dependent. There were 299 species at Duning Woods Nature Reserves and 277 at Schrader Weaver Woods Nature Preserve. Also, we are doing a boardwalk replacement at Twin Swamps Nature Preserve. It's a self-assembled boardwalk system by Whipcraft Company from Wisconsin. Another win for the Division of Nature Reserves was a $1 million grant from the Sam Shine Foundation for our Southern Indiana Forest Biodiversity Initiative. The goal of this project is a deep restoration at a landscape scale on 6 forested nature preserves in southern Indiana. We are removing invasives and thinning canopy trees to enable oak regeneration and to allow herbaceous species to thrive. This work is being contracted out to private restoration firms, and we have spent or obligated about $850,000 of the grant so far. Some challenges we face are high land acquisition cost, land acquisition funding. We are cobbling together packages when faced with a high cost and different matching requirements, invasives, climate change, where we're already seeing impacts to our work, especially winter work with the needs of frozen ground. Equipment, vehicles, and everybody knows about the supply chain issues. Staff capacity. It puts a limit on what we can do, and it makes working with others a must. And here is our contact information. Tom Swinford, the Assistant Director of the Division of Nature Preserves, Teresa Clark, the Heritage Coordinator, and Jenny Orsburn, the Program Manager for the Lake Michigan Coastal Program. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ron. That's excellent news about that grant for work in Southern Indiana. Are there any questions for Indiana? I was pleased to see all those different new acquisitions. Some of those items for discussion in terms of contractors and land act costs. In fact, all of your challenges I wrote down as excellent items for future discussions. So now we'll move to the north, to our great state to the north of us in Minnesota.
Hello, this is Kelly Randall, the statewide outreach coordinator with Minnesota's Scientific and Natural Areas Program. This is our 2021 Natural Areas Report. I'll start with our program goals, our structure, the areas that we focus on, and features the program protects. Then I'll give a snapshot of current protected lands, our staff, and a few examples of Minnesota SNAs. Finally, I'll cover a few recent challenges and wins. The primary goal of Minnesota's Scientific Natural Area Program is to ensure that Minnesota's natural heritage is not lost from any ecological region of the state. A secondary goal is to provide compatible nature-based recreation, education, and scientific research opportunities. We focus those goals on the following: scientific and natural areas, which are exceptional public lands where native plants and animals flourish, where rare species are protected, and where we can know and study Minnesota's fascinating natural features. Native prairie banks. These are conservation easements on private lands. A landowner agrees to manage the land and protect the native prairie in exchange for a one-time payment. Native prairie tax exemption. This allows for removing of taxes from eligible lands with native prairie. Natural Areas Registry. These agreements are for managing public lands at all levels and that contain exceptional natural features. Next, the natural features that we preserve. These include rare species, such as the five-line skink seen here. Relict flora or fauna, butterwort is the example seen. And undisturbed plant communities, such as dry oak savanna. We also preserve geological formations and fossil evidence, seasonal wildlife concentrations, such as nesting habitats, and successional processes. There are over 168 scientific and natural areas that protect over 192,000 acres, and 162 native prairie bank easements protecting over 14,250 acres of prairie. Also, 350 native prairie bank exemptions, and nearly 50 natural areas registry provide incentives to protect almost 20,000 acres more. We have 31 scientific and natural area program staff working statewide in Minnesota. We have around 170 volunteer site stewards that make observations and assist with management tasks on about 140 of our sites. And we have many more volunteers that participate in stewardship events throughout each year. Now for a snapshot of natural areas the program protects, such as world-class peatlands. This is the Red Lake Peatland SNA in northern Minnesota. Old-growth pine forests, the Lost 40 SNA. Lake Superior Cobble Beach. This is Iona's Beach on the north shore of Lake Superior. And habitat for prairie chickens, as seen here at Blue Stem Prairie SNA. And Dry Hill Prairie. This is Forester 34-1 Native Prairie Bank. Finally, a few recent challenges and wins. The pandemic led to several outreach and management issues in the past year and a half. It's canceled several of our stewardship events, as well as shut down prescribed burn season for this last year. We have ever increasing needs to manage invasive species and also control new ones that are coming in. Acquisition and permanent protection of lands is becoming extremely complex. As an example, 8 acquired parcels are still awaiting official designation in 2021. There's been a state hiring freeze that's created staff and contractor shortages. 6 staff positions remain vacant in 2021. And public use conflicts continue to be on the rise. We are seeing more illegal dumping and vandalism at our sites. Some wins. Each year since 2010, an average of nearly 600 acres have been added to native prairie bank easements. Nearly 3,500 species observations were made the past 2 years during SNA's self-guided bio blitzes, where visitors can come to our sites and make observations, see what sites or see what species are out there, and report those to us. Those have been fairly popular public events for us. The publication of the Prairies of Minnesota Landowner Handbook in 2021 is a very new publication, and we're very excited about it. Over the past 10 years, acres of habitat restoration and enhancement have increased about 50%. And last, but certainly not least, Minnesota will be the setting for the 2022 Natural Areas Conference. We'd be very happy to see you, and you should definitely come see us in Duluth. On behalf of Minnesota Scientific Natural Areas Program, I would like to thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, just let us know.
We have a question regarding the Minnesota Prairie Landowner Handbook. Is that available for purchase or download?
Right now, that is available on our website. I'll put it in the chat for people to download if they'd like.
Oh, that'd be excellent.
And it's
I'd like
it's
a copy
available
too.
free. Okay.
Yeah, your Native Prairie Bank program is very enviable, and we hope to, if in Missouri we're able to get some additional funding, perhaps through the Recovering American Wildlife Act, we would hope to hopefully replicate a similar program. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and move now to Missouri, and I'll go ahead and mute myself. Well, hello everybody. I'm Mike Leahy, natural community ecologist with the Missouri Department of Conservation. I'd like to share with you a bit about our natural areas program here in the Show Me State. Here we see the fall colors in Rhyolite Glades at St. Francis Mountains Natural Area. Missouri's State Natural Areas Program was created in 1977 by agency policies and an interagency agreement between the Missouri Department of Conservation and our sister agency, the Department of Natural Resources. The Jack in the Pulpit is our program's logo. Since then, the interagency program has expanded to include the Mark Twain National Forest, the Ozark National Scenic Riverways, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Missouri Ecological Services Branch, and the Missouri chapter of the Nature Conservancy. Natural area designation is by agency policy and unfortunately does not include legal articles of dedication. Currently, there are 192 sites in 77 counties, totaling 98,000 acres that are designated Missouri natural areas. Of this acreage, 42% is owned by my agency, the Conservation Department, 27% by Missouri State Parks, 14% on the Mark Twain National Forest, 9% on Mingo National Wildlife Refuge, and the remainder is on other entities such as NGOs. Number of staff and volunteers is a difficult question since multiple agencies and NGOs own and manage designated natural areas in Missouri. Within my agency, myself and 8 regional natural history biologists have the primary responsibility of oversight of our designated natural areas. But the actual management of these areas on conservation permanent lands is conducted by teams of regional staff, including foresters, wildlife biologists, and sometimes fisheries biologists. Missouri, like many states, spans multiple ecoregions. These range from dry less-hill prairies in the northwest to cypress tupelo swamps in the southeast. We have some of the largest tallgrass prairies remaining in the east of the U.S., east of the Flint Hills, and some of the most diverse, such as here at Golden Prairie National Area. In the Missouri Ozarks, we have many outstanding examples of calcareous glades and open oak woodlands on designated natural areas. One of our recent program wins has occurred at Alley Spring Natural Area. In 2007, this 795-acre area was designated on lands owned by both the Conservation Department and the National Scenic Riverways, owned and managed by the Park Service. This spring, shown here, Alley is the 7th largest in Missouri and discharges an amazing 81 million gallons of water in a day. It exemplifies the karst landscape of the Missouri Ozarks. On the dry and rocky hillsides above the spring and the surrounding hills occur fire-adapted communities of dome-like glades and pine oak woodlands. Over the past 11 years, Park Service staff and AmeriCorps volunteers have thinned these glades of their native but invasive eastern red cedar, and in cooperation with the Conservation Department have conducted multiple prescribed burns. The next photo, taken in the same spot shown here, reveals the the restoration effort. At this burn unit, our monitoring data show 110% increase in the species richness of native wildflowers and native grasses following the fire management. 2 months after the most recent burn in March of this year, park staff discovered a previously undocumented population of wild dill, Perideridia americana, a state-listed rare species in the restoration unit. One of our program challenges to the ecological integrity of many of our sensitive Ozark isolated wetlands, including fens and sinkhole ponds, has been the deliberate introduction of domestic and hybrid swine into the wild for sport hunting over the past 20 years. This has resulted in a burgeoning feral hog population in some of our more wild and rugged landscapes that often have multiple natural areas. Damage includes rooting, wallowing, and essentially rototilling sensitive habitats as seen in these photos. In response to this, the Missouri Feral Hog Elimination Partnership was created in 2015. This partnership represents several government agencies along with agricultural and outdoor groups with the intent to eliminate the hogs from our state. The funding and staff in the partnership work with the USDA APHIS agency to trap and eliminate feral hogs on both public and private lands. And in addition, regulation changes and increased enforcement efforts have begun. Finally, this year, we are beginning to see the number of feral hogs actually captured in cage traps start to decline. Contact information is shown here, including our webpage, and we thank you. North Carolina, now on the eastern seaboard.
Hi, I'm John Blanchard, North Carolina State Parks. I manage the Natural Resource Program. This is what I'm trying to manage. We have, our system is a little different than other systems. We have state parks, state natural areas, state trails, state lakes. But for the most part, what I'm talking about is state parks and state natural areas. Our state parks are 98% free of infrastructure. So we have a lot of land out there that really doesn't have anything other than trails on it. So when I talk about managing natural areas, I'm talking about managing the natural areas of the parks and then our state natural areas, which have no infrastructure and really no public presence on them. In order to do that, I've got 10 full-time people, 5 of them burn bosses, meaning they light fires on their own, 11-month seasonals, and then we cooperate with other agents, Forest Service and Nature Conservancy, Wildlife Resources. We have lots of partners to do this work. As an example of the kind of things we're trying to accomplish here, we're really moving into restoration of some of these things. As you can imagine, lots of the lands we buy are not in very good shape. There have been people living in North Carolina for a very long time. So this is an example right here, our Deep River Restoration Site, where we're trying to restore shortleaf and hardwood pine forest, which we're really proud of because it really isn't done very often in the Piedmont of North Carolina. Most of our lands have been farmed and logged extensively for hundreds of years. So getting something back into a really good shape will be somewhat unprecedented at the scale of 215 acres. You can see in the upper left, that doesn't even represent how bad that looked originally. I called it a novel ecosystem of loblolly pine, Russian olive, and ticks. That's essentially what that property looked like. And so we went in, we harvested it down to the appropriate hardwoods and shortleaf, and we're in about the second year on this, and it's starting to look pretty good. We're really proud of our burn program as well. Obviously, everything in North Carolina is a fire community. Well, maybe not obviously for those of you who don't live in the Southeast, but everything burns down here. And so we've really ramped up the fire over the last 10 years or so. As you can see from that graph, it's the trend is good. We still need to be burning 3 or 4 times that much every year, but we're pretty proud of what we're accomplishing. That's a Stone Mountain fire right there. That had 60 people on it, aerial ignition, really complex to try to pull that off and trying to get all those resources together in a park that's has active use by the public. It was quite a situation. So we're getting pretty good at this. So our wins, what do I think? Well, our program's growing. We're winning the fire battle, I think. The restoration projects, a few years ago, we'd never done this. So the fact that we're able to accomplish this without a lot of internal strife is a big deal. The fact that we're going in there to control invasive species, eliminate plantations, burn it aggressively. These are all things that just a few years ago wasn't really happening in the state park system. And I think we're working at scale. A 200-acre almost clear cut let's just call it a heavy thinning, is a pretty big deal on a state park or a state trail or a state natural area. So being able to accomplish that and being able to accomplish 600-acre burns is, to me, is what's at scale. Maybe in the western landscape, that doesn't look like a lot. In the east, that's a big fire. So what are our challenges? Well, our state natural areas, those 24 that I talked about that aren't state parks, essentially have nobody assigned to them. So trying to get security, boundary marking, road maintenance, these things done is a really big challenge. Some of our sites are nearly inaccessible. No, not nearly. They're completely inaccessible because of they're in, a, let's just say, a swamp or a savanna where if you try to get equipment in there, it's just too wet, and we don't really have any equipment for dealing in those wetlands. Not enough mowers, not enough heavy equipment in the division to do what we need to do. And there are certain areas that we're just trying to scratch our head about. I hate to plead ignorance, but how do you manage a mountain bog where it really fire doesn't get in there very easily? It's up at the top of a hill surrounded by 10,000 acres of wildland. How do you manage a mountain bog? And the same thing, or a bald, and the same thing with a mountain bog. You've got maybe 10 acres surrounded by roads and houses, and it's mucky and peaty and needs fire, but you can't really get fire in there. I'm not even sure of the origins of these mountain bogs, whether they were created by species that are no longer there or whether they were connected to a hydrology that is no longer present. So we've got some questions on managing some of these really special landscapes. So that's all I have. I don't know if that's 5 minutes, but I'm done. So if you want to contact me, there it is. Thank you for your time.
John, we have some questions with regards to your management there. One is, how has the public responded to some of these more, aggressive restoration efforts, which sound great? And then another question regarding that is, what are some of the key decisions that contributed to your increased fire management in the mountain region of North Carolina in the last few years?
I think I got answers. Can you hear me? I've got answers to both of those. We were quite concerned going into these restoration projects about how the public would react to it. We've done, half a dozen of them or so where we're doing complete clear cuts or really severe removal of the canopy. And we actually have had very, very little negative input from the public. We've gone out of our way to try to prepare for that by doing, sometimes we'll do a public meeting, have a meeting at the park. We prepared signs that we'll put up at the restoration site outlining the steps we're taking. And I've got one that says, "Pardon my dust," and then there's an explanation about what's going on there. So I think what we found is if you explain it to the public sufficiently, that most people accept it. You'll hear from a few, especially the noisy ones, and especially in this area here, foresters who are really about production, and we don't intend to harvest timber over these more than one time. We're taking the timber off and then restoring it. So there's a bit of argument on that side there about why are you not just growing these trees for money? So that hasn't really been a problem. Fire in the mountains is interesting because just in my time here, which is 11 years, we've gone from quite long fire return intervals to things that are quite short due to some of the work's been done with tree ring analysis and things like that. So it's a problem trying to get fire back into really large landscapes that have North Carolina has the highest amount of wildland urban interface in the country. So trying to get fire into these large landscapes, really dangerous landscapes, is quite difficult. And now we're knowing that the fire return interval is probably 3 to 5 years in the Southern Appalachians. So we do what we can do, but and we don't even own the majority of it. Most of it's in national forest out in the Southern Appalachians. So we're doing what we can do. I'd answer more questions that were more specific about that if you'd like.
No, that's excellent for now, and thanks. And now we'll move from North Carolina just across the Appalachian Divide there into Tennessee.
Hello, I'm Jason Miller, State Natural Areas Program Administrator with the Tennessee Division of Natural Areas. I'm going to be giving you all an overview of the State Natural Areas Program as it is today here in 2021, I wish I could be participating in this meeting with you all today, but I have a site visit with some conservation partners that unfortunately could not be rescheduled. This is one of my favorite meetings of the year, so I do truly regret that, but I'm going to try to give you guys a good overview anyway. Pictured here is just a beautiful stand of the once federally protected but now fully recovered Tennessee coneflower out at Couchville Cedar Glades State Natural Area. I chose to kind of kick this off with Couchville because it's one of our flagship sites. It's just a great example of everything we do here in Tennessee. It's a 140-acre natural area just on the edge of Metro Nashville. It gets a lot of visitation, but it also had a lot of long-term management with repeated prescribed fire, removal of encroaching cedars, cooperative management as it was initially purchased by the Nature Conservancy, and now we sort of manage it along with Tennessee State Parks. It sort of encapsulates a lot of what we do, and if you're ever in the state, I would highly recommend visiting it. So a little bit about the Tennessee Division of Natural Areas. We fall within or underneath the umbrella of the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. The entire Division of Natural Areas have 12 full-time staff, led by somebody who you all are probably familiar with, Director Roger McCoy, who also serves on the board of the Natural Areas Association. The Division of Natural Areas is split into two parts. The Natural Areas Program, which we oversee the on-the-ground management of our natural areas, and the Heritage Program, which contains our botanists, our zoologists, our data manager, and things like that. Across Tennessee, we've now managed to protect 84 designated state natural areas, and that's across the 10 physiographic provinces of the state. So they're all represented within the program. And within those 84 natural areas, we've got about 130,000 acres protected. The number always seems to be growing. As you kind of look at our map here, you'll see a big cluster right around Nashville, and that's because of our cedar glades, which contain many endemic species in the Central Basin. Tennessee, like most states, will claim, is a very diverse state, but that truly applies to us because we've got 6,000-foot peak of Roan Mountain all the way to basically sea level on the Mississippi River. So we have a lot of natural communities and just high quality systems we're trying to represent within our program. It's a big task. We have, like I said, only 5 full-time staff members dedicated to natural areas preservation across the state, but we do what we can, and we think we're in good shape. I want to highlight a couple of major conservation successes we've had over the last couple of years here in the state. This one I actually previewed the last time we met in person, and that is an upland restoration project at Stinging Fork Falls State Natural Area. At that time, we had just sort of developed a process for retaining the timber revenues of pines harvested out there, and since that time, we've managed to actually sell that timber and turn around some of that revenue into management at the site. Currently, we've conducted a number of prescribed fires out there. We've cleared more than 220 acres of loblolly pines, and we've recently awarded a contract to treat invasives out there and conduct some timber stand improvement that will help our planted shortleaf pine in the future reestablish themselves. Another major conservation achievement for us was the addition of more than 1,600 acres out of Cedars of Lebanon State Natural Area. The site was already over 1,000 acres to begin with, and the addition was already held in public ownership by our State Division of Forestry, but they transferred that jurisdiction to us in 2019. So that more than doubled the size of the natural area out there. There are a high number of endemic and rare species at the site. However, it hadn't seen active management in decades. Since we took over jurisdiction in 2019 and then legislatively protected that additional acreage, we've managed to kick off a whole lot of management out there. Many acres cleared just with a masticator to remove creeping cedars from the open glades. And we've burned several hundred acres out there that just haven't seen fire in decades. So that's been a huge win for us. Somewhat similar to our work at Stinging Fork Falls State Natural Area, through the award of a large NIFWIF grant in 2019, we've been able to improve more than 1,000 acres of habitat on Savage Gulf State Natural Area. This site includes a number of rare species, including the federally protected white fringeless orchid, as you can see pictured here. This land was once all loblolly pine plantation, and through some planting efforts and some prescribed fire, we've really managed to turn this site around, and it's going to be an important legacy piece for us going forward. Lastly, although this doesn't apply to a specific natural area, I think our biggest conservation win here in Tennessee in the last year or two has been the expansion of our prescribed fire program. In 2018, just ourselves, we burned about 500 acres, but working through some partners and by expanding our own internal capacity with the purchase of some equipment, we increased that by more than 500% and burned about 2,500 acres last year. I doubt we'll be able to replicate that in 2022, but I do think that's sort of going to be the trend for us, is to be able to increase that acreage over time from the very small burns we did historically. In terms of conservation challenges here in Tennessee, I think we're probably in a similar boat to the other state programs, where we simply lack the manpower to implement all the management we'd like to see happen on the ground, and even to administer all the potential grants out there to implement that management. It takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of land to manage. So I want to end on a positive note, and to say that I think we're on the right track in Tennessee. We're getting a lot of good work done. We've got many more projects than those I pointed out here today. But if you've got questions on those or would like any additional detail, you can hit me at the email address listed here, and I'll usually respond pretty quickly. Again, I'm sorry I could not be there today, but I hope you all have a nice afternoon and got a little something out of this presentation. Thanks.
Great. Well, I'm jealous of Jason being out in the field today, although right now today in Missouri, it's not a great day to be out in the field. It's pretty much howling wind and sleeting. So with that, we'll move on to the great state of Virginia, and I will turn my microphone off.
Hi, everybody. It's Rick Myers from Virginia. Glad to be here at the State Natural Areas Program Roundtable and share an update from Virginia with you all. I'm with the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and here in our agency, the Natural Areas Program is within the Division of Natural Heritage. I'm the Natural Areas Stewardship Manager, so I'm responsible for the statewide management of the State Natural Areas System. Here's our program and scope and structure. Our system was codified by the Virginia Natural Area Preserves Act of 1989, and that gave our program the authority and the responsibility to acquire and manage the natural area preserves as one part of our strategy to conserve Virginia's biodiversity. Currently, we've got 59,841 acres protected in the system, and a total of 66 state natural area preserves statewide, and most of those primarily are managed by our agency with some partners, collaborators, and stakeholders also part of the statewide preserve stewardship effort. We've got 20 full-time classified staff now, 11 wage staff, and hundreds of volunteers across the state helping us with this work. Here's a couple of examples of preserves in Virginia. One in Difficult Creek Natural Area Preserve in the south side of the Virginia Piedmont. Here, the overall objective, primary goal, and main challenge of managing this preserve is to restore Piedmont woodlands and grasslands. Here's some photos that illustrate our work to remove the planted loblolly pine that's predominated on this site when we purchased the property in the early 2000s. And what we've done since then, which has largely been a program of frequent prescribed burning every 2 to 5 years, and concerted effort over time to remove loblolly pine using commercial timber harvests, and expose the ground cover to more sunlight. And eventually, the idea here is to remove all the loblolly pine, which is planted really out of range and off-site in this part of Virginia. This site is really interesting, highest biological diversity of vascular plants of any location in Virginia. Also includes 2 really rare species, the smooth coneflower, which many of you probably have heard of, globally rare plant, a G2S2, and then one that's much more limited in distribution, the tall barber's buttons, that's Marshallia. And then lots and lots of other state rare plants. It's an extremely rare habitat in that there's a type of soil that develops on the Virgilina greenstone country rock. The bedrock here is full of magnesium and calcium, and the soils that develop here are unusual, and hence the rare vascular plant diversity. And an extremely rare butterfly is associated with this site. And then in the Shenandoah Valley, Calbane Prairie Natural Area Preserve, where we are restoring one of the last Shenandoah Valley grasslands. Literally, most of the valley has been highly developed for agriculture, light industry, residential development, and is altered nearly completely from its historic condition 3 centuries ago. But with funds from the DuPont Natural Resources Damage and Restoration Settlement, we've strategically more than doubled the size of this preserve, and the funds from the settlement have enabled conversion of low diversity native warm season grasses that were established 20 years ago or so to a forb-rich prairie, and then lots of acquisition of adjacent property to develop a downwind smoke window or smoke shed, so we can continue to use prescribed fire frequently here, maintain prairie communities, even though we're not quite surrounded, but pretty hemmed in with residential and industrial development at this site. Here's some program wins recently. We are conducting the most extensive natural landscape restoration really in the state of Virginia with longleaf pine restoration, Piedmont grasslands and woodlands, and also Shenandoah Valley woodlands and prairies. And I should mention too that we're doing restoration work on the eastern shore of Virginia to convert former agricultural fields to migratory songbird habitat. Then number 2, we are developing effective approaches to manage the pandemic-induced outdoor recreation surge. We've had over a 100% increase in our visitation of the preserve system. We have 22 preserves currently that are accessible, meaning they have a parking lot and a trail system and a kiosk, interpretive signs, and those sorts of passive recreation facilities. But what we've done with the surge and how to manage this increase in visitation is to define and enforce visitor capacity limits to continue balancing the rare species protection work with sustainable public use. 3, we're developing and maintaining successful partnerships to increase prescribed burn capacity really statewide in order to maintain the fire-dependent species and communities that are a major part and a critical part of our system and the biodiversity challenge that we have to maintain and enhance that biodiversity. And then number 4, we continue to garner support from the current administration coming in, and we had good luck with the last 3 Virginia administrations to continue to grow the size of our program and expand our initiatives and stay relevant. So the outdoor recreation surge, like many of you all, I think, have experienced, this has been a major challenge in the past 2 years. In response, we have kept our preserve parking lots small while defining preserve parking capacity. And the way we've done that is to install numbered parking bumpers and no parking signs in adjacent areas and roadways. We've enforced capacity by staffing our parking areas with wage employees, what we call these our public access technicians. And those folks are at the preserve, especially at high visitation points of the week, weekends and holidays, and they interact with visitors and message to them about why visitor capacity is limited. We've also begun installing soft and hard barriers at sensitive sites to keep visitors from damaging fragile habitats. And we've updated our interpretive signage to better explain the ecological significance and the fragility of the preserves and why we have enacted our sustainable trail etiquette procedures. So contact information, this is me, and I'm here in Richmond, Virginia, and really looking forward to seeing all of you in the live version of the next Natural Areas Roundtable. Thanks.
It's always great to see the progress at Difficult Creek. It looks way different than many years ago when I was there. Very cool. Well, now we'll move back to the Midwest here and move on to the state of Wisconsin.
Greetings, everyone, from Madison in the heart of America's Dairyland, home of the Wisconsin Badgers. I'm Thomas Meyer, team leader of the Wisconsin State Natural Areas Program. Thanks very much to NAA for hosting the State Natural Area Program Roundtable. Really happy to be here. little bit about ourselves. Our program's history is long and it's rich. It was established by state statute way back in 1951 as the State Board for the Preservation of Scientific Areas, making it, I think, the very first statewide nature preserve program in the nation. And we have been celebrating our 70th anniversary throughout 2021. In 1985, the Natural Heritage Act was passed that did three things. It changed the name of the program from scientific areas to state natural areas. It created the Natural Heritage Inventory Program, and it also gave us the authority to legally dedicate state natural areas. Our program is administered out of the executive branch of state government by the Department of Natural Resources, but we are a true partnership program. We have more than 60 program partners that own land designated as state natural areas. These include the federal government, University of Wisconsin, county parks, county forestry departments, and of course, our land trust partners, including the Nature Conservancy. We designate state natural areas both on DNR lands through the master planning process, and we do so on partner lands through memoranda of understanding. And we also are authorized to legally dedicate lands that are both state-owned and private property. Program is administered by an 11-member Natural Areas Preservation Council. These members are drawn from academia and state government. And as far as staff goes, we're doing pretty well. In recent years, we've been fortunate to grow our staff from one that was centrally based in Madison to one that has a very strong field component. We have 4 state natural area staff in Madison. They provide policy and guidance. And we have 9 regional ecologists who oversee implementation of the program and work with 31 natural area crew members out in the field. Like other states, we rely on help from other agency staff to get our work done. State natural areas by the numbers in Wisconsin, excuse me. We have 693 designated state natural areas. About 2/3 of those are on DNR land, some owned by the State Natural Areas Program directly. Others are embedded within state parks, state forests, and state wildlife areas. The remaining 1/3 of that 693 are on partner-owned lands. Of that total, 153 are legally dedicated. They cover 406,000 acres of land. Sizes range from about 3 acres to more than 9,600 acres in size. Average size, 585 acres. And like most state natural area programs, our unit of conservation is the natural community. We recognize 102 different natural community types in Wisconsin. They are spread over our 16 ecological landscapes. You can see that map here. Wins, well, we've had a few in recent years. Most significant of which is after 3.5-year effort, we completed a strategic plan that replaces our 1983 long-range plan. It provides a framework for establishing our program priorities for the next 10 to 15 years. It's 54 pages in length, and it's linked on our website if you'd like to take a look at it. Another great success story was our partnership with public television. Great public awareness. We went on site with PBS videographers to capture more than a dozen SNAs in southern Wisconsin by land, water, and air via drone. And the 1-hour documentary is called Wisconsin Scenic Treasures, and that too is linked on our SNA website. Encourage you to take a look. And lastly, we've really grown our state natural area volunteer steward program over the last few years. In 2020, we had 30 volunteer stewardship groups that contributed more than 5,800 hours of work on 39 SNAs. That labor value alone is $150,000, which we have been able to leverage for other grants. Challenges, well, I won't go too deep into this because I'm sure we share many of the same. Like your states, the pandemic really pushed an unprecedented number of visitors to our sites, especially when our own state parks were shut down for several months. This resulted in user conflicts, overuse. Some of our sites are getting loved to death. One upside, perhaps, is that people who had never before visited an SNA came to know and appreciate these places. Another challenge has been a diminishing appetite among some legislators to fund our land acquisition programs. And lastly, we continue to fall behind on managing our portfolio of SNAs. We just don't have the horsepower anymore to keep ahead of invasives and prescribed fire. So we're at the point where we're exercising kind of a form of triage, determining which ones we will place resources in and which ones we are going to cut free. That's it. More information and our website is available at dnr.wi.gov. Go ahead, go there, search SNA, and you'll find State Natural Areas Program, and my contact information is here as well. So thanks for the opportunity to share more about Wisconsin State Natural Areas Program.
Thanks, Tom. Any questions for Thomas? Any questions for Thomas on the Wisconsin State Natural? That strategic plan is excellent. We've shared it here in Missouri and with other state programs, and really appreciate the work that you all put into that. It's helped us as well. If not, we will move to the Appalachian Mountain State of West Virginia for a more newer state natural area program coming off the heels of Wisconsin, and we'll turn it over to West Virginia.
Hello, I'm Jim Vanderhorst, and today I'm especially happy to introduce our new Natural Areas program to this group. I've been working on this idea since 2018 as a job task, and this year it has become policy thanks to these brave men pictured here, including our DNR Director, the Chiefs of Wildlife, Diversity and Parks, and the Canaan State Park Administration. I'm the guy not pictured with the biodiversity data, the maps, and the crayons. Our Natural Areas program is brand new. We are a child of the pandemic. In February 21st, 2021, the Natural Areas policy was signed by DNR Director Stephen McDaniels, establishing authority to designate natural areas on state lands. Natural areas are nominated and managed by DNR sections, Parks and Wildlife. Then on April 21st, our first two natural areas were designated within Canaan Valley Resort State Park, with a total of 2,206 acres protected. Our staff for the Natural Area Program includes 0 full-time classified staff and 1 wage staff, temporary. One of our natural areas is Canaan Valley Wetlands. The Canaan Valley is a high elevation frost pocket in the Allegheny Mountains, home to many species which are more common further north. The Canaan Valley Wetlands are a globally significant biodiversity hotspot, hosting one of, if not the greatest concentrations of rare communities and species in West Virginia. The diversity of wetland habitats is greatly enhanced by underlying bedrock, which includes both limestone and shale formation. The valley is an increasingly popular destination for recreationists, including skiers, hikers, mountain bikers, golfers, and second homeowners. Our second natural area is Bald Knob. Bald Knob provides a great view of the valley, including the Canaan Valley Wetlands. The new natural area can be reached most easily by chairlift at the State Park ski slope, which runs year-round. The new natural area borders the Canaan Valley National Wildlife Refuge and the Monongahela National Forest, providing opportunities for coordination between the agency to manage the biodiversity of the site. On Bald Knob, we have rare heath barren and red spruce forest vegetation associations, and 2 rare salamanders, including the threatened Cheat Mountain salamander. We've had a couple big wins this year. Our program has made an impact by resurrecting and establishing policy that was never enacted in the 1970s. The draft natural area policy from the 1970s formed the basis for our new policy. We've also designated the first 2 natural areas in West Virginia at Canaan Valley Resort State Park, protecting over 2,000 acres of land. The next 3 wins are somewhat aspirational, but are within reach. We are currently developing management plans for the first 2 natural areas. And we have nominations for 3 additional natural areas on state parks ready for the designation by the director's signature, with an additional 2,780 acres. I expect these to be signed this year. And waiting in the wings I've created a portfolio of 20 proposed natural areas on wildlife management areas awaiting nomination by the wildlife section, totaling over 10,000 acres. Our challenges. West Virginia's new natural areas program was established to face the increasing threats to native biodiversity on our state lands posed by recreation, resource extraction, and other conflicting resource management activities. We have formed partnerships within our agency, game management, parks, natural heritage, wildlife diversity, and law enforcement to identify and protect the most irreplaceable natural diversity areas on state lands in West Virginia. Another challenge is our lack of staff or funding. Dedicated natural area program staff and budget are almost non-existent. The new program provides a pathway for increased cooperation between biologists and land managers in our agency. My contact information is here. I may be retiring in a year or two. You can contact the agency and find out whoever's still left. Thank you.
Well, that's wonderful news, Jim, and what a legacy to retire on. And hopefully that'll continue. We'll make sure that we watch that. In terms of funding, since you're in the same agency as wildlife, it sounds like, I wonder if in the future some management stewardship funding could become available through West Virginia state wildlife grants. And then if RAWA passes, that might be another possible source of funding, since you're in the same agency with the wildlife grant recipients.
Yeah, so the Heritage Program does get SWIG grants, and so our data goes directly into the Natural Areas Program. For now, I don't know that we'll be using any of that grant money for managing the natural areas. That will be seen in the future, but we certainly have a direct line to the Natural Heritage Program, and there's certainly potential there, and there's a lot of things to figure out in the future for the program in general.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. And then, of course, you've got such tremendous biodiversity in that state. It's a real win for all of us. So at this point, we can open it up to any further questions, or be thinking about possible topics for future SNAP meetings between now and September 2022 in Duluth. But also in terms of Duluth, if there are any, we can certainly do what we're doing here, but there might be other ideas on more focused discussion items. But anyways, we'll open it up here to answering any questions that are lingering or haven't been answered yet. And I will go ahead and mute myself, and just if folks need to ask a question, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello, this is Jenny from Illinois, and I'm interested in how Wisconsin prioritizes where to work.
I'll leave that to Thomas, but if you look at their strategic plan, they did a really good job of outlining the basics of that, but then I'll let Thomas, of course, chime in.
I can, of course, read the strategic plan myself.
You may be done, but the strategic plan really does an interesting job, and it's something that we need to do more thinking about here in terms of kind of taking a hard look at what sites to focus management on, what sites to, unfortunately, in a sense, not completely walk away from, but deprioritize. And I'm sure that would be an excellent topic for a future meeting, is just how to prioritize land management stewardship efforts.
Yeah, this is Glenn Jude. I'm just struck here by two things that we have seemingly, and this may be a misimpression, and that's part of what motivates me to bring this up, but almost two parallel universes. there's a massive national program in fire suppression, fire science, preparation for fire. And then it's just striking how active natural area programs are becoming in fire use and application. Is there any opportunity to do a better job of getting some of the resources from our national fire management apparatus, as diverse and spread out as it is, into what might be considered preparation or pre-suppression work that natural area programs are doing?
Hey, Glenn, this is Rick Meyer. Did you hear me?
Yes.
I don't have any strategies, real well-developed ones to share with the group, but I could just simply say that in Virginia, our state program and other state agencies in Virginia over the last 10 to 20 years have developed formal fire management agreements with the federal agencies that manage land in Virginia. So that's the U.S. Forest Service and the National Park Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And those federal agencies are very much our partners in fire here. And what that does, in addition to expanding our fire crew capacity and putting more people on each burn, it gives us access to their sort of hard resources. So engines and other fire apparatus that the feds tend to have in larger quantities than most state or government organizations and private conservation groups like the Nature Conservancy. So anyway, that's really what we're doing in this state. And I don't know how applicable that is elsewhere to other state agencies, but having a formal written fire management agreement, cooperative agreement with a federal organization works for us.
This is Jim Anderson. I work for a Forest Preserve District in Northeastern Illinois. And one of the things that we did to increase our ability was to create a wildland wildfire urban interface plan, community protection plan that really gets you in line to be able to work with the federal agencies. Now, we don't have, Shawnee's in Southern Illinois, but it's not in Northern Illinois. And we're not really surrounded by any forest lands. We do have Midday-Wind, tallgrass prairie, but beyond that, we're really been trying to work with doing that comprehensive urban wildlife interface to get that. We did that for the whole Chicago wilderness region, which is part of Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana. And that does allow us to be in the running for application for dollars. But right now, those dollars are really focused on the West. And the other thing that I'd like to bring up that we've been made aware of through our Illinois Prescribed Fire Council is that many of the insurance companies in response to the fires out West have the number that fund or protect, insure prescribed programs has greatly decreased, and they are now not for government agencies, but for land trust and volunteer organizations. They are restricting the amount of burning that they can do in relationship to their annual budget. So that's something that's new on the horizon. I spoke to somebody within the insurance industry, and it's just something that's happening because of the West Fire. So that would be something that I think the state natural area program could really think about, because that is going to start restricting people. And it's also applicable to people that do contract burning. So some of them are going to be restricted.
Okay,
Thanks.
great.
I see Ryan has his hand up from Virginia, so I'll go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks, Mike. I was just going to add one thing to what Rick said in answering Glenn's question, which is a great question, by the way. In the western part of Virginia, there's a very active kind of nexus that serves as this interagency partnership, and that's the Fire Learning Network, specifically the Central Appalachians Fire Learning Network, which is managed by the Nature Conservancy. There are other fire learning networks, or a few dozen of them around the country. And that FLN has been around a little bit over a decade and has surely but steadily increased the capacity of multiple management agencies and NGOs to put fire back into the mountains of Western Virginia. And one highlight of that is that last year was the most successful in terms of acres burned, the most successful burn year really in modern history in Western Virginia because of partnerships like the Fire Learning Network. So I think there's opportunities to learn from that and to scale up in the future, but just I thought that's relevant to your question.
Great. I think this has been very responsive and it's kind of emerging, but there's something in my brain that's saying, couldn't we have a change in policy or a new program window or something in our provision of federal fire resources, fire management resources that would be a little more responsive to the natural areas component of fire in addition to all of the other things. And this is maybe something we can work on, or it's just experience that's bubbling up that's already happening that just needs to be formalized. Thanks for everybody's input.
Thanks, Glenn. One idea, this is Mike from Missouri, is the U.S. Forest Service has a cooperative forest landscape project program. CFLRP is the government acronym. And here in Missouri, it's been used to restore shortleaf pine woodlands in a great way for natural community restoration, including many natural heritage sites, not necessarily state designated natural areas, but it's been a great tool for that. And it's tied into fuel reduction and wildfire prevention, but it's gone towards natural community restoration. I know most of those are out west, but that might be something to look at that has a similar, it has the ability to be both a natural community restoration emphasis as well as reducing wildfire risk. So that's something maybe to look into as a way of bridging that gap, is the Cooperative Forest Landscape Grant Program. Well, any other questions? We've had quite a nice range of presentations today. Excellent job and excellent questions from everybody. If I don't see any that we really haven't been able to answer either through chat or online for the most part. Sure hope to be able to see folks next fall in person in Duluth. And we will also be organizing a state natural area program meeting prior to then. So please stay in touch and stay tuned with the Natural Areas Association. So with that, I will turn it over to Lisa and Mariah if they want to have any last pieces of information to pass on from the association.
Thank you, Mike. I've been kind of active in chat just in the background, commenting on how impressive the work that you all are doing. There's no doubt about it. This SNAP Roundtable, Mike, you're the better judge than I am, but this feels, it feels really good. It feels like programs are doing great work, and programs, while they have their challenges, we are continuing to protect natural areas. And the fact that we have a brand new program in our midst is very exciting. I know West Virginia and Jim Vanderhorst especially has been working very hard for a number of years to get this off the ground. So congratulations on that, Jim, and we'll look forward to continuing to celebrate that with you. But thanks to each and every one of you who took the time to put together a report and work with us on a kind of a new way to do it. And I'm looking forward to the next one already. So with that, stay in touch. Mike and the committee are going to continue to work closely with all of you on topics of concern. Mike's gathered a couple of those, I sense already from just today's conversations. And we're going to we're already building program for 2022's roundtable. So stay in touch with us. Let us know how we can build programming that helps you. And we will look forward to seeing many of you face to face next year for this in Duluth. And I just want to shout out to Maura. McGinty Kloss, my colleague today, who has really behind all of the organizing of this roundtable. Maura, thank you so much. You, as always, have done an exceptional job to put this together for us. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mike. Take good care, everybody. Stay in touch and we'll talk soon.